Hey, this is Melissa Lombardi with the Association of Food and Drug Officials. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to give everybody just a couple more minutes to sign in before we start our presentation on Tattoo Inc. Good afternoon, everybody. It looks like we're getting about the same amount of attendees. My name is Melissa Lombardi. I'm with the Association of Food and Drug Officials, and we'd like to thank you for joining us for the AFDO Professional Development Series. We are here today with John Mysock with Ceutical Labs. He's going to do a presentation on Tattoo Inc. and AFDO, color additives, and microbiological safety initiatives. John is serving in his fourth career as a senior consultant with Ceutical Labs in Flower Mound, Texas. John retired from FDA's Office of Cosmetics and Colors in June of 2019, where he served as an SME in these areas of personal care product microbiology and manufacturing GMPs. Prior to FDA, John served in a global capacity with Estee Lauder companies, responsible for regulatory compliance in all manufacturing facilities. In 1982, John took over the helm of the Food and Drug Standards Manager for the state of Wyoming Department of Agriculture, where he became an internationally recognized leader in the adaptation of HACCP principles to regulatory programs. John was promoted to Deputy Commissioner of Agriculture prior to leaving for Estee Lauder. John also grew up on a farm in Ohio, where he learned a great deal about self-reliance, resilience, and creativity. Leaving the farm to start his journey, John graduated from The Ohio State University and the University of Wyoming. The skills that John learned in those early years bring him to you today. If you have a chance, ask John about his experience as a shepherd in Wyoming's Bighorn Mountains. John is also a musician, a vocalist, something he has enjoyed since performing professionally at age 16. For all of you, we will be taking questions at the end of the presentation. You can enter those into the question box at any time during the presentation, and then at the end, I will read those to John. And if everyone's ready, I'm going to turn it over to John.
Okay, hello everybody. I hope you can hear me a little better than you could hear Melissa, because for me she was breaking up a little bit. So if you can't hear me very well, let I guess send somebody a note and let them know. Okay, listen, I wish I was sitting in front of everybody. I wish we were in Phoenix. Wish a lot of things, but here we are. I guess the advantage of doing this virtually is we probably have more people listening than we would have at AFDO. So welcome to all of you who are new to AFDO. So here we go. Now, basically, I kind of put down a list here of the things I want to touch today, and obviously be more than this. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Body Art Committee, it was put together several years ago when a young girl named Sarah stood up in the crowd and asked me, when I was giving a presentation on the safety of tattoo ink, a young woman named Sarah stood up and asked me, well, how can we make this better? And what about things like scarification and all these other things that I'd never even heard of? So anyhow, that was several years ago. Here we are now, and the Body Art Committee is alive and well, and under the tutelage and under the helm of Casey Stevenson, Laurel Aragona, and the rest of the committee. And we have some really, really outstanding members on the committee that have really helped us accomplish a lot in a few short years. So today, all right, tattoo ink and permanent makeup. Okay, they are cosmetics. There's with a twist, and I'll get into that in a little bit. Basically, I want to start and talk about the safety concerns that have come up, especially the microbiological contaminants, color additives, and what are the issues here. I want to try to get an understanding there. Now, what I was asked mainly to do today was talk about these two charges. Charge number 2, which was a committee charge, I think it was 2 years ago. Color additive petition for titanium dioxide and intradermal tattooing. So what is that? Hopefully by the time we get done here today, everybody will understand what that's about. And then charge number 4, which is was also I think we've had on our plate for a year now. It is the basically best practices for sterilizing tattoo ink and permanent makeup. And finally, when we get all through this, hopefully, you artists that are on the line will be able to pick up some pointers on, what you can do to help improve your situation and protect yourself from any problems that might arise because of contaminated ink. All right. Okay. Tattoo ink, and I'm just going to say ink, but tattoo ink and permanent makeup ink. Ink is a cosmetic, okay? Even though it's never specifically mentioned in the Food and Drug Act, you're probably, I'm not aware of anywhere where it actually says anything about it, including going back to the 1938 Act. I may be wrong. If somebody is aware of somewhere in the act where it says something about tattooing or permanent makeup, please bring it to my attention. I'm not aware of it. But obviously, in the last few decades, we've seen a meteoric interest in tattoos and permanent makeup, and that's the story everybody understands. Anybody under the age of 40, probably has a tattoo or will get one. Okay, so once the popularity grew, problems started arising. Of course, an FDA was put in a position where they had to declare, look at these problems and decide how to react. And since they're cosmetics, they're placed in the dermis, that is like where the FDA and the industry sometimes don't agree, but we're going to hopefully cover that in this speech here. An interesting thing, carbon black, which is a very common ingredient in ink, is regulated as a medical device for use in tattooing during medical procedures. So I just thought that was an interesting thing to put in so everybody to understand. And also in the United States, as far as how we look at tattoo ink pigments, it's a little different than Europe and the rest of the world. In Europe, they're the pigments are regulated as chemicals under REACH, which is maybe it might be similar to our EPA, all right, as a chemical, but they're not regulated as cosmetics in Europe. Just as the interesting question, something that's been on my mind is tanning chemicals. No, they're different. They're not the same, but they have the same effect. They cause your skin to change color, but they're not considered inks. So just an interesting point. Okay, there are two major areas of concern that have arisen in the last couple decades, with, of course, mainly microbiological concerns that cropped up, I think, originally in 2007, and in 2012 there were a couple outbreaks involving pathogens that were causing disease. So, and why is this the case? Well, tattoo ink contains water, and that's the main reason that they can support microbiological growth. Now, the source of the contamination can come from different places. It can come from raw materials, it could come from water, and it could come from the manufacturing environment. So what I'm going to say, even though it's a microbiological problem, it really goes back to good manufacturing practice and how you handle ingredients and that type of thing. Okay, so hopefully we'll explain that a little bit. The chemical issues with safety have to do mainly with color additives that have not been approved. Okay, and I'm going to go through that whole scenario. They can either be the pigments can either be have possible health effects on their own, or they may also be contaminated, say, with like metals, okay, heavy metals. All right, so color additives, what's the issue here? FDA has not exercised its authority to regulate color additives, okay, for tattoo ink and permanent makeup ink. And it's, is that going to change? Who knows, maybe someday, but right now they're not actively pursuing anybody that uses what's called unlisted inks. The law is pretty clear that color additives require pre-market approval. In fact, it's black and white. There's no question about it. Any color that's used in a Food and Drug Act regulated product has to be listed for use, okay, and which is basically it has to be approved before it's used. So that's kind of where the conundrum is, okay, because there's nothing has been approved for tattoo ink and permanent makeup. Okay, so given this situation,
John, I think we lost you.
okay. I had a little signal come up, said my audio was lost. So maybe I better back up. All right, so given the issues with the safety of tattoo ink, the Body Art Committee wanted to do what it could to maybe bridge.
I think we lost you again, John.
Hey, John, could you try calling in on your cell phone? John, are you still there?
See.
It sounds like we can hear you again, John.
Oh, you can? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What is going on? All right, I'll try a shot at this. Okay. So for the colors, the pigments used, like I said, pigments used in tattoo and permanent makeup are considered cosmetics. And under the law, it says that cosmetics, pigments used in cosmetics have to be approved, pre-approved, okay? And it goes back to the color additive amendments in 1960. Now, just a little history. Why did the U.S. decide to come up with the color additive amendments? Well, in the fall of 1950, many children became ill from eating orange Halloween candy that had 1 to 2% FD&C orange number 1. And about in the same time, in the early mid 50s, there are many other FDA discovered several other problems with colors, right? And at the same time, the Delaney Amendment to the Food and Drug Act which is about the carcinogenicity of pesticides and food additives. That regulation or that change in the law was also being discussed. So apparently, the color additive amendments are kind of in this, the same period, the same discussions were going on about the safety of food, and color additives were in the middle of it too. And also this time, the industry, the color industry, was developing new synthesized colors, that were not previously used. Okay. So there was a lot of new colors. There were originally there were like 200 at the time they passed the law. There were 200 colors that had been in use that were given provisional listing, and of those, there are several of them that are still around. I think around 50 of the original colors, but most of the colors that are listed have been submitted on color additive petitions, which is I'll talk about in a little bit. That's what we're trying to do. All right. Okay. All right. As I mentioned, there's no color additives have been listed for use in tattoo ink or permanent makeup, and that the main reason is because FDA looks at the tattooing as an injection under 21 CFR 70.5. Okay, color additives for use in injections. And FDA, their stance is definitely that cosmetics or tattoo ink and permanent makeup are injected. And there are FDA documents where they talk about intradermal meaning the same thing as injection. So, but one of our goals is to try to clarify the regulatory requirements, that focus on the rules that exist or the policies that FDA follows at the current time. And one of them in this situation would be, obviously, if you apply a tattoo to the skin, it's not the same as taking a needle and putting it into your heart. Okay, so it's, we have an opportunity here. We're going to try to get it defined in the regulation, at least, what is tattooing and permanent makeup. Here, I told you I was going to discuss this tanning chemicals. I just think it's interesting because they're both went through the color additive process, but they're not, and they do cause a change in the skin, and that canthaxanthin is ingested, right? And basically, it's a color, you know, it's a naturally occurring color, but it does have some problems. And then the other one is the DHA, dihydroacetone, that darkens the skin when you add it to the skin. But it doesn't, like I said, it's not injected. At least I'm not aware of anybody who injects it. So it's not approved for the area, the eye area or the lips, right? Okay. All right. All right. So let's start with our charge number 2, the color additive petition for titanium dioxide for intradermal tattooing. Now, you may wonder, well, why did we decide why titanium dioxide? Well, I think it's probably one of the most common ingredients, common pigments used in tattooing. And part of our job in this color additive petition is going to be, you know, kind of explaining what it is being used for and what effects it has physically on the body and in the skin. And this will be the first time that anybody's ever submitted a color additive petition for pigments used in TI or PMU. So, you know, we're really writing a new script here. So we're learning as we go, and I think it's going to take a lot of input from some experts, but I think we can hopefully get something accomplished. So, all right, mentioned that Title 21 CFR 74.5B, which is color additives for use in injections for cosmetic purposes. All right, and our goal is to have a listing in there that into titanium, in addition to titanium dioxide. Titanium dioxide is already approved for use in all FDA regulated products without any limit. So we want to add another paragraph under 70.5B that explains how it can be used in intradermal tattooing. Okay, that's our goal in permanent makeup. Okay. Where we're at right now is we have contacted FDA in what's called a pre-cap petition correspondence, and we have received a letter back, and they've told us what it is they're looking for. You know, and like I said, I think this is an opportunity for the industry and AFDO to, you know, have a real serious input about what the future of tattooing and permanent makeup are regarding FDA's regulations. So hopefully those of you out there that want to get involved, we certainly would love you to get involved. All right, this is the main crux of what we were trying to accomplish with, you know, getting some feedback from FDA. You know, what do we need? What's going to have to be done, right? Because nobody's ever asked before. Okay, so their response is the first time I'm aware of it, where I've actually seen anything in writing about what they expect to be done, right? All right, like I said, there are no color additives that have been approved. And FDA has traditionally enforced use exercise and enforcement discretion, which I talked about earlier. Basically, they've, you know, decided they have other priorities and aren't in a position to enforce it right now. And FDA has no formal guidance for the type of toxicology data needed for color additives. Right, it's never been proposed before, so this is, you know, we're on a new path here. Okay, these are 4 points here that that FDA responded back on what the minimum, at the very minimum, what they're going to expect in a Colorado petition. And the first is results of literature search of all published toxicology data on proposed color additive and its impurities. That is not really going to be too hard, because there's mountains and mountains of information on TiO2, since it was provisionally listed and it was in use far before the 1960 amendment. There's a lot of information. I think where we are going to have to fill in the gaps is information on, you know, what happens to it when it's injected in the skin. Okay, so that could be a little problem. Now the next one here, the acute sensitization bioassays in tattooed animals, addressing the sensitization, phototoxicity, and allergenicity through intradermal exposure. Now, all these things have been done for TI2 added, put on the skin, but it's the intradermal exposure part that there's really nothing, very little out there. So, and you know, it appears from this statement that they're asking us to actually produce this data. All right. So they got acute sensitization through intradermal exposure, and then you the next one down, genotoxicity testing from a battery of bacterial and mammalian testing to assist in evaluating the carcinogenicity potential of the color additive. Okay, so I know, you know, I'm pretty sure there's data already, a lot of data on the carcinogenicity of titanium dioxide, but I don't. What we need to get clarified is how does it fit into testing for the intradermal use, right? Do we need, we have to go far beyond that? And so that's the question. The final question here, the long-term lifetime bioassays in tattooed animals with UV light to evaluate chronic sensitization, photosensitization, and dermal carcinogenic potential. I mean, I'm not really sure what, when they say long-term, this is a learning curve for me, what they're going to expect here. But the last two, and well, actually 3 of the 4 sound like straight ahead scientific, you know, studies. And it may, in my personal opinion, if, you know, we're either going to need to have other players involved here, maybe some upper, you know, some of our universities and colleges to help do the perform these tests. Okay, now just so far, these are just a few things that I've thought of as far as what are the issues with the testing. One, that they asking for animals in testing to conduct research, and I'm pretty sure that's one is specialized, it's costly, and it may, even though it's legal to do animal testing in the United States, there are some ethical issues, and but it is illegal in EU for cosmetics. So, and I think other products. So, if you, the industry in the United States, is my understanding, about 90% of the ink sold in Europe comes to the United States. So I don't know if we go publishing results of animal testing on inks, does that automatically say, oh, well, you can't use titanium dioxide in European inks anymore? I'm not sure. That still has to be ferreted out. Then the question, you know, can the non-animal models be substituted? You know, that's a question we have. Now, another thing, when we send our pre-Colorado petition correspondence, we asked for FDA to consider either doing the testing themselves or paying for it. And there's provisions for that in the color additive amendments, though we haven't gotten any feedback at all, because I'm sure it would be I think it would be a new, maybe a first time if it does happen. So, but basically what we're asking to do with this color additive petition is in the case of titanium dioxide, is to make something, a rule that everybody could follow, and list it and say it's legal. All right. But if we can't get over this hurdle, we might be living for this enforcement discretion for a long time. All right. Okay, so enough for color additives. The next issue we have to deal with on the committee, body art committee, is microbiological contaminants. And basically, they should meet standards for, there's two things. They have to meet the standards for cosmetics, which are under BAM, Bacteria Analytical Manual, Chapter 23, and they should be sterile. Okay. And the questions come up, obviously, if it's labeled sterile, is it really sterilized? Now, I'm talking about products that are on the market now. The recent statements, and I gave the link here, that FDA is suggesting that they expect tattoo inks to be sterile. However, the current standards, the FDA hasn't published any specific requirements for tattoo ink other than the statement they made that I've listed here. All right. In order to be free of pathogens, must have a method to control them. And to me, it's I put HACCP, which for those of you who are not familiar, means hazard analysis and critical control point system. It's basically the GMPs and the critical steps that are important in making sure that the finished product that you're selling is in fact free of pathogens or sterile or whatever you label it as. Okay. And that's another problem kind of thing we have with in the US. There's no requirement for sterility, but some products are labeled as sterile. Okay, so it's kind of a crazy situation, especially if you're buying the product for your shop. All right, but these are the standards that do exist. We have USP 71, which that's an FDA suggested method. All right, there's you can control bioload in pigments, water, and other ingredients. Okay, you have to manufacture in a sanitary environment, and then you have to test package product prior to terminal sterilization. Okay, and because you have to control the bioload before you treat it. Okay. All right, so under charge number 4, this kind of came about because FDA did a lot of testing. They found various levels of bioload in a lot of different products, but they also found it in products that were labeled to be sterile. They also found contamination. So which leads to like, well, what kind of procedures is the industry following? And it became apparent to that the industry needed some guidance, not only the ink manufacturers, but also the companies that are doing the sterilization. And most common is for the European market is the gamma radiation. So in the US, it's common in drug product and in some foods are gamma irradiated, cosmetics, some are irradiated. But there was, we thought a good idea, so the industry maybe give them an idea of what is a good set of guidelines to go by if this is what you're going to do. Okay, so everybody knows, okay, this is what, say it's sterile, this is what you have to do. Okay, and then I'm pointing out here, gamma radiation is not the only way you can control the bacteria and make something sterile, but gamma is the kind of the industry standard at the time right now. So that's one we're putting together guidance for that purpose. Okay. All right. Now I know this all sounds pretty crazy, especially if you're an artist, but what can you do to protect yourself? I think is mainly know your suppliers, ask questions, what are the ingredients, where's the stuff from, and you should know what it is, and you should know that it's consistent, that you're getting the same thing all the time. Okay. You should, since tattoo ink and permanent makeup are cosmetics, they have to be labeled to meet the cosmetic labeling regulations. So AFDO, one of our early first things we did was come up with a labeling guide just for ink. So if you want to know what should be on a tattoo ink label, the guide is very good at it. The thing about tattoo ink, if you're running a shop and you buy ink, it's not required to have the ingredient statement, but everything else is required, right? The product, color, the net weight, all those things are required. If you're getting a product that says it's sterilized, ask for proof, okay? And that could be done. They should be able to provide a copy of the certificate they got from the company that sterilized it, okay? And it should be specific to that lot that you purchased, not something that was sterilized a year ago and you just bought it. So it should be updated. If you purchase untested lots, I mean, you're buying some problems, possibly. All right. And then probably one of the biggest things that the users, the artists, can do is to not dilute the inks. All right. If you must dilute, only use sterile water. I mean, that's water that's not sterile can be a source of pathogens, and especially in tattooing, since you're injecting it in under the skin, there's a possibility they can put even low levels of certain bacteria can be a problem. All right, and they actually right under the surface of the skin, it's is a nice place for different types of bacteria. They like it. Okay. And I've had a lot of questions about, well, what do you mean by sterile water? I just went on to Google and I found these 3 products like in 15 seconds, and they're all available from Walgreens or CVS. Some of them you can walk in and buy them. Some you can order them online. The sterile water for injection, they're small, single use. And the sterile water for irrigation, same thing, it's a small unit. But the one that I thought was most interesting, I thought might be very useful to the industry, is this My Pure Mist or something like this. It's a plastic, single use, small, you just snip the end off and you just inject, put it right in, you throw the plastic away. Okay. Other things you can do is keeping track of the pigments that you do use on specific customers. And the reason that helps is if you know the lot number, location that was used on, and volumes that you used approximately, I mean, it may become valuable to in the future if there's an adverse event. An adverse event would be a serious problem that may jeopardize a customer that requires medical intervention. Okay, so if you find that, you know, somebody's got a bad had, you know, their arm done and they've got a bad infection, I mean, that's something that you know, you want to make sure that it didn't come from the ink. Now, when you have serious events, they should be reported to, you know, your local health department, FDA, and through MedWatch. And the links are mentioned here. And if I mentioned earlier, the 2012 outbreaks were discovered because of MedWatch. Okay, because people in 2 different states reported the same problem involving the same ink. Okay, so that's how, you know, how important it is. So, you know, most of the time, you know, these things aren't going to, you know, result in a recall, but sometimes they do. Okay, so let's recap here shortly before we get into the questions. You know, I think, you know, basically, you know, pigment and, well, inks of both types, tattoo and permanent makeup, they're much safer than they were before FDA started, you know, getting putting regulatory pressure on the industry to get things improved. So I think there's probably fewer products out of spec now than there were, you know, like I said, 20 years ago. If we can improve the best practice and put it in place in more businesses, you know, that'll definitely help everybody. And hopefully, you know, we will succeed with our Colorado petition and with the sterilization both. And I'm hoping that the sterilization standard is we hope that it will be accepted by industry for, you know, for guidance for them. Okay, follow the labeling guide. You know, do everything you can to protect yourself, document everything, right, and report serious problems. So that's basically what I've got to. I would like to mention our partners with AFDO and on body art issues, which mainly it's a National Environmental Health Association, which they are, you know, the overseers of the body art model code, all right, and then also the Body Art Education Alliance, which AFDO is kind of overseeing, but one of the goals of the Education Alliance is to put together a training program for the model code, right? The NEHA body art model code. So, you know, here the names here, you know, if you wanted to join, come on in. Can you help out and maybe be part of the solution? And here are a few resources that you may want to take away. You know, the first one there, the AFDO.org Body Art Committee. There's a lot of information on there that you may find helpful. And if you want to get involved in the Body Art Committee, you see Ken, Sarah, and Laurel. Contact any one of them. And, you know, join AFDOS. If you're not already a member, join AFDOS and AFDO or any other regional affiliate. All right, we'd really like to have you involved. Okay, all right, that's it.
Okay, thank you, John.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So I'm gonna leave this up. Everybody feel free to ask some questions. I have gotten some along with the presentation we've been going along, so I will start with those first. John, in the very beginning when you were talking about regulations, you were talking about REACH. What does REACH stand for?
Oh, yeah, I knew you'd ask me. I have to look it up. It's an acronym in Europe. It's right now. It's not coming up. I think if anybody knows, I mean, I can send that out, or if you want, I'll look it up right now. So.
Okay. Well, we can come back to that one if you want to.
Okay. Okay.
The second question that came up was, what does the titanium dioxide do?
You have to repeat that. Your voice is a little wavering.
Okay.
Repeat it.
What does titanium dioxide do?
Oh, okay.
When you were talking about it.
It's a color additive. It imparts color to tattoo ink. Okay, it's white, so it's obviously used in white tattoo ink, and it can be used in other inks just to change the tone. And another, we may open it. I don't know if we can open questions to other people to answer them, but it also has an agglomeration effect where it mixes with the other colors and agglomerates into larger groups of so it tends to hold everything in place. The agglomeration, does that make sense? Yeah, it's agglomeration, yeah. I think it's called. But mainly it's just a straight color additive, and it's used in almost all inks as with other color additives, right, to give various kinds of effects and color effects. Okay.
Okay. Hopefully that answers the question. If it doesn't, you guys let me know in the chat box. I did have two people that answered the REACH question for us. It stands for registration, evaluation, authorization, and restriction of chemicals. So thank you both for that.
Yeah, good. Same mine.
Let's see. So this is a three-part question. So what is the general thinking on glow-in-the-dark tattoo ink? Does it seem safe, or are there too many unanswered questions? So it's safe use and long-term effects are on the body, and does it fade faster?
Well, I mean, if they're asking my opinion about them, they're the same as any other color additive. So right now, there's no limit that I'm aware of for the use of them under the FDA's enforcement strategy. Now, maybe someone from FDA is on here can maybe if there is something going on with that, I'm not aware of. But I think they would be like any other color additive.
Okay. They asked also, I don't know if you know the answer to this, does it fade faster?
Does it stay?
Fade, as in like not be as dark over time.
Oh, I don't know. I couldn't answer that. That's somebody in tattoo manufacturing might know the answer to that question, but I sure don't know. Yeah, do they maintain their color over time? Is that the question?
Yeah, it's like, does it fade over time? Yeah.
Oh, fade, yes. Oh, okay. No, I couldn't answer that. I mean, all tattoos fade over time, I think, somewhat, but I don't know if they're any different than any other color additives, so.
All right, let's see. So what are your thoughts on tattoo artists mixing their own custom inks from scratch?
You're talking about like artists that mix their own inks?
Yes, from scratch.
Well, I mean, that would be the pigments themselves. Even if they just buy pigments, they're technically regulated by FDA. But what the artist does with them is regulated by the state and local government. Okay, so in essence, there's really no difference for the raw materials that are FDA regulated, but how once you get them in your shop and you open them up, it's up to the state and local government. I hope that answered your question.
What about from like a microbiological standpoint for that?
Oh, are there any differences? Well, I would think that you're definitely the sterility of the water is probably the biggest challenge. And not, if you're making up bulk batches, there's a lot of issues there. If they're going to be hanging around for a long time. If you're just mixing them on the go, right, and using them and throwing away what's left over, that would definitely lower the risk. But if you haven't removed the potential pathogens before you use it, then you could be causing problems. All right. I think something that if you start with the tattoo pigment itself, assuming you're mixing with alcohol or whatever, that would help. But the water is a critical step, and how have you treated the water? And I showed you the bottles of water. There are also filtering devices you can get that are made for laboratories that you can put on a syringe to filter the water as you use it. That's a little technical probably for most shops, but I would be mostly concerned about the water.
Okay, somebody also asked in regards to water about Everclear or glycerin and using those.
Everclear, ethyl alcohol?
Yes, I'm assuming, or glycerin.
Or glycerin. Well, they're common ingredients. I mean, there's no reason you can't use them. Glycerin, can be a micro problem, but ethyl alcohol is not, of course. So, how you mix them, and like I said, if you mix them and use them immediately and throw away what's left over, your risk goes way down compared to if you mix it a big batch and keep it for time. Even if you refrigerate it, it's not going to kill anything that might be growing in there. Okay. The longer you keep it, it's just like with food. The longer you keep it around, the bigger the chance that you can have a micro problem.
Okay, I think that answers the next question. Sorry, somebody asked one question that kept building on the same topic, so I wanted to get them all together.
That's okay.
They said, what about an expiration date? But I think you kind of answered that. Like, you should just make it, use it, discard it.
Okay, you have to do that. Say that again, slow.
Okay, they asked about an expiration date, but I think you kind of answered that, saying that if you make your own ink, you should probably use it and then discard it after.
Yeah, well, if you're going to keep it, yeah, you definitely want to know when you made it. But I mean, I wouldn't personally, I wouldn't recommend keeping inks unless they've been well preserved or sterilized. Okay, all right. And usually, if you preserve something, put enough, for instance, alcohol. If you put a lot of alcohol in it, it's at least what some people have told me is that it's painful, right? Because you have to get like a minimum 20% alcohol. That's a lot of alcohol, right? So I think these are just, it's not from my firsthand knowledge, obviously, because I'm not practiced, but it's from the feedback I've gotten from people over the years. Alcohol will work, but if you put enough in there to actually sterilize the product or to preserve it, it's probably not going to feel very good to your customer. So There are other preservatives you can look at, but I'm really not sure how they would function in tattooing.
Okay, thank you. I think the only other addition to that is what would the glycerin shelf life be? But I think that's maybe
okay.
the same
You're
question.
talking about what's the shelf life of glycerin?
Yeah.
Well, it depends on if it's preserved or not. Or sometimes like glycerin that you buy off, you look on the label, it'll have a preservative in it, because glycerin can be problematic. So I would just, if you buy it at a drugstore, it probably is going to have a label on it that has a use by date on it. Off the top of my head, I mean, I just wouldn't practice keeping it around a lot, right? So.
Thank you. Sorry that was turned into a very long question.
Oh, no problem. No problem. And
right,
if anybody has questions for me, I got you can get a hold of me. The first slide is my email address. Anybody's, welcome to contact me for any questions.
All right, so we still got quite a few more. Why doesn't sterile water produce a pathogenic microorganism?
Why doesn't it produce?
Yeah, why doesn't the sterile water produce a pathogenic microorganism?
I don't quite understand. It's been sterilized.
I think that because you told them, right, because it had been sterilized versus the regular distilled water has not been sterilized.
Right,
I think
distilled water, distilled water. You can get sterilized distilled water, but you're not going to find it in CVS or Walgreens. Okay. Usually, if you want to get something that's sterile, which means it has basically everything that could cause the problem has been killed, you're going to have to get something that said it's water for injection or something like that, or the ones that I showed, right? And they come in single use small bottles, so you use what you need and just toss it out. So, and they're usually around 80 cents to maybe $2 a unit, depending on which product you buy. But they're there. You can find them. If you need help, just let me know.
Thank you. All right, so we have a couple more. Since thousands of people are already injecting titanium dioxide in their skin every day, can we use human volunteers as the animal model for testing phototoxicity, genotoxicity, etc.? They think it would be less costly and circumvent the ethical issues. So is that possible?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I guess if FDA will accept humans as animals, well, I mean, I guess, we have a lot of, if there's data out there that already exists, it may really help a lot. Okay. But I know a lot of data that the color industry has, for instance, and I mean the big companies, right? That data is not shared, right? It's not something you just find, but if there's available data, well, I'd say, yeah, we could use it.
Okay, thank you. Is the objection to animal testing only ethical, or is it also because animals are not an exact model for human reactions?
Well, I'm saying FDA has already told us that they want us to use rat or mice, whatever rodent models. But my point was it's an ethical issue, and I think there's been discussion in the United States about maybe not requiring it, having alternatives to using it. So I think one of the questions we have to ask FDA is, can we substitute non-animal tests in place of what they're looking for?
Yeah, someone had asked that question too. So what would the alternative to non-animal testing be, you think?
Well, I don't know. I mean, FDA listed a couple possibilities. There's the micro, there's a tissue on the plate, where you have tissues that are grown on a plate. There's a lot of different things, but I don't know if they're going to address FDA's questions. Okay, because they're more, like I said, there's a lot of data about the safety of titanium dioxide and other color additives or other pigments for that matter, but none of it has been directly tied to okay, this answers the question for injection, right? Because it really boils down to, okay, once you put the pigment underneath the skin, what happens to it, right? And our goal would be to be able to define that and say, okay, we know, a certain percentage of it comes out through the skin, certain percentage of it can end up in the, in this, that, and the other organ or not, right? That's what they want us to be able to tell them. Where does the stuff go? My personal feeling is like it's not going very far because they usually last for decades, right? And plus, you only apply it one time. Okay, it's not like a food where you consume it every day, or like a shampoo where you do your hair every night, or creams and lotions where you put them on, sometimes more than once a day. So the amount over lifetime is going to be much lower for ink than it would be for your traditional cosmetics that are applied constantly, right? Okay. So those are kind of the things that we need to, bring to FDA's attention and ask if they agree, or what we'd have to provide to come up with that conclusion, right? So.
Thank you. One of the participants said that they do use pig skin sometimes for research too.
Wait, what? Can you repeat that, please?
I guess for testing. Somebody would mention that they use pig skin for testing. I just wanted to share that.
Oh, yes. Well, sure, exactly. So those are the kind of things we need to point out to FDA, that I know there's data available from Europe where they've done that. So, whether they're going to accept that for what they're looking for, I don't know. We'll just have to see. Or if they're going to, make us redo it ourselves, so.
Thank you. See, someone wanted your opinion on UV ink.
Used ink?
UV ink, as in like ultraviolet ink.
Ultraviolet? No, I think the question is, can you treat used ink with ultraviolet? Is that the question?
I don't know. It just says UV ink and a question mark. Kenneth, I don't know if you can give me a little more information.
Used ink is highly frowned upon. You should use single use. Now, I know that the industry likes to use the 8-ounce bottles or 4-ounce bottles and use it on several customers, and over time, as long as you're not putting ink back in the bottle, you're probably okay using the ink in the bulk bottle, okay? But never put anything back inside the bottle. And if you didn't use,
talking about ultraviolet ink, like that shows up, that you wouldn't see it on your skin unless you were under an ultraviolet light, like in a club or something like that.
Oh, we're back at the glow in the dark stuff. Okay. Like I said, I don't think there's nothing that stands out specifically about those products that's any different from a safety standpoint. It's any different than any other ink. Okay. Did I answer that question? With the question about safety, so. Okay. If it comes down to safety, it doesn't matter what color it is or whatever. Safety is safety, and none of them are there's not a specific color or whatever that is not, that can't be contaminated, if that makes sense. Okay.
Right. Let's see. What is the general timeline regarding the research for ink toxicity, as well as regulation?
The general
Timeline regarding the research for it?
The time, yeah, that we don't know that yet. That's going to be, one of the questions we come up with. I don't think there's any limit. In other words, once we open the Colorado petition, it's filed with FDA. It's filed forever. Okay. Now, what we do with it, how it gets handled, and whether or not we end up with a new regulation, that's a whole nother thing. But the actual petition itself, it doesn't. I don't think it doesn't have a shelf life that I'm aware of. Okay, and we may be able to ask for it to be removed. Once but it becomes a legal document. So it's not something. It'll be around forever.
Thank you. Let's see, one last question, and then if you guys have any other questions after that, let me know, or if I missed something that I didn't answer completely for you. Has there been any study done or any information available about the various inks used in and around subdermal implants?
Ink?
So
mean
what?
Like what?
In and around subdermal.
Okay, so if you got subdermal implant, what happens to the ink that's around it? I guess
Yes.
I'm not aware of
any studies about that?
I'm not aware of any. Boy, if you can find them, that'd be nice to have. Yeah, if I understand, you're talking about like a body art implant, right, under the skin, and then
Yes.
or are we talking about medical implants?
The subdermal.
Subdermal
body
implants, body art. Okay, yeah, I'm not aware of anything. I guess usually those are made out of material that doesn't react with anything. So I don't think it would. I'd be surprised if there was a big issue, because it shouldn't be. It's usually like the mill certificates, right, required to the material is be non-reactive, right? Otherwise, it wouldn't be. It'd react with everything in the body. So I don't
think he was asking because you do tattoos around implants sometimes, and if you think the ink would react to like any granulomas or scarring or keloids.
Like I said, I'm not an expert on the meteorology or the metallurgical stuff around implant materials, but generally they're not reactive. Right? If they were highly reactive, they wouldn't be suitable to put in the body, right? Like I said, titanium and certain stainless steel composites, things like that. I mean, they're not reactive. So we do have people on the committee who can answer that question. So if maybe we can give that one to the committee to respond back to for the person.
Thank you. I think that's the last question, other than I think me and you and Amy had discussed this. Are you going to be able to share your PowerPoint?
Okay, I think I heard, am I willing to share the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Was that a question? Yeah, definitely.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
okay.
I have no problem.
All right. And Amy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that will be available when you post the recorded session of this PowerPoint.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, yeah, it'll be available on the AFDO website, right? So.
Correct. Yep. The recording of this webinar and the PowerPoint slides will be available on the AFDO website by the end of the week.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, John, and thank you everybody for joining us. I think that's all the questions.
Right.
Hope you guys all have a good day.
Everybody. We really appreciate it. Look forward to hearing from you if you have any questions. Okay.